This is the Italian Real Estate Podcast, here to help you with the ins and outs and basics of Italian real estate, presented by ItalianRealEstateLawyers.com. Hello there, and welcome to another edition of the Italian Real Estate Podcast, presented by ItalianRealEstateLawyers.com. Of course, we are back here again with Italian attorney Marco Permunian. How are you doing today?
Good, how are you?
I am doing great, thank you. And today we wanted to get a little bit into the topic again of €1 homes in Italy and try to answer the question, is it really the best option to find low-cost housing in the country? Which for many of you who've watched previous episodes may already know our opinions on €1 homes. But also we wanted to get into some alternative options that may be worthwhile looking into to find low-cost or affordable housing in Italy, because the €1 houses aren't the only option available. So maybe I've almost already answered that question for you, Marco, but would you say that the €1 house schemes are the best way to find low-cost housing in Italy?
Not necessarily, and it depends on whether you are motivated to go through all of the bureaucratic steps that are necessary in order for you to buy these €1 houses. And we've talked about this in other videos, but there are several requirements that need to be met when it comes to buying a house for €1. And a lot of people, they're under the impression that, you just pay €1, you get the house. That's pretty much it. But there is a lot more to consider. For example, I'd say the first thing to consider is that when you're buying a €1 house, it could be possible that you are buying a house that is not really habitable. So you need to do a lot of renovation works to make it habitable. Of course, it's not necessarily always like that. There are some houses that are being sold by these towns that have activated these €1 houses programs that are maybe not in good condition, but perfectly habitable. But in some other cases, the house is not habitable, and it's necessary not only because it's a requirement set by the town, but because otherwise you wouldn't be able to live in the house that you renovate heavily. And evidently, the goal of these towns that are mainly in southern Italy, in Sicily and Sardinia, is to not only repopulate these towns, but also make these towns, especially the historic civic center, look better. Because there are some properties that have been abandoned. So they're owned by somebody, maybe somebody that inherited these properties, but people that don't want to live in those properties, they never took care of these properties, and now they are sort of a liability for them. So because they have to pay property taxes, even if it's a small amount. So the town, because these properties are abandoned, with also the goal of repopulating the historic center of these little town or villages in southern Italy, gives the owners the ability to sell their houses through the €1 houses program. And like I said before, there are several requirements. So not only you need to buy the house, there might be a bid. So it might not just be that you offer the price and the first who offers the price gets a house, but maybe there's a bid, so the one that offers the highest amount gets the house. Or sometimes the person who gets the house is the person who has the best renovation plan, which is evaluated by the town itself. But there might be also other requirements that need to be met. For example, you might have to establish a residency in the town after you have successfully purchased the property. It's not always there, that requirements, but I've seen it a few times. Otherwise, the only requirement might be that you have to carry out heavy renovation works. And like I said, it might be that the town chooses you based on whether you have the best renovation plan. So ultimately, I'd say that, of course, these programs are a wonderful program. So the goal is to repopulate these towns, make these towns better. They're highly advertised in the media, especially in the US, where there's much more involved. It's not just buying a €1 house, but it's also a matter of renovating the house in a way that works for the town. So just be prepared, because there's a lot of not only bureaucratic steps, but also practical steps that you might have to carry out.
And it's interesting, though, you mentioned that these €1 houses are on a system where you may have to bid for them. But there's also another system in Italy that exists where bidding is very much part of the process, and that is actually going to auction. I think that's worthwhile to jump into that topic as well, because that is another area where people may be able to find houses, especially in not just smaller villages that are kind of a little bit further out that are looking to repopulate, but even major historic city centers that you might be able to find really amazing deals. And would you be able to kind of talk about that a little bit and compare it with the €1 houses scheme and how they differ?
So there is I believe, a substantial difference between the €1 houses program offered by certain towns in Italy and these auctions that we're talking about. So buying a property at an auction in Italy might be an easier way to go for several reasons. First of all, normally, even if it might not be necessarily the case, but normally you're buying a house that is habitable. So it's not a house that is in a bad condition. It's just a house that was repossessed by the bank because the owner, in a normal scenario, wasn't able to pay the mortgage. So the house might be a house that is a very good one in a very good location, as opposed to these €1 houses programs, where normally these houses are being sold are in the historic center of a little village where people no longer live. On the other hand, houses that are being sold through a public auction are everywhere in Italy, so they might as well be in the location where you're actually looking to buy. So if you're looking to buy a property in Florence, instead of just going through the normal channel and looking for properties for sale in Florence, you might want to take a look at houses that are being sold through an auction, because that may be the way for you to save a very good amount of money.
But to also compare and contrast the auctions versus the €1 homes, say for example somebody's interested in buying a €1 home, what would the cost be once they've made their bid? What is like maybe an average that someone could start thinking about would be a realistic, acceptable offer, and how much maybe should they set aside as well for those renovations?
So regarding those houses that you bid on, the purchase price might be, I'd say, anywhere between 5,000 and 20,000 euros. So we have said it before, it's not really €1. It's the person
a €1 starting bid.
Exactly. So the person who offers the highest amount gets the house. And then, like we said, there are houses that are not normally in a good condition. So you might have to carry out heavy renovation works, and the amount, it's difficult to quantify. It depends on the specific situation. It depends on where the house has structural problems, even, because in that case, you might have to carry out even heavier renovation works. But if that's not an issue, so if the house doesn't have any structural problems and you just have to kind of renovate the house, so the facade and maybe change the windows and this and that, but not something that affects the structure of the house, I'd say you might expect to spend right now at least another 30 to 40,000 euros. So we said it many times, you have to put in a lot of time, and it might end up costing you more than buying a normal low-cost house, or more than what you would pay for a house that you get at an auction.
And so, again, comparing the auctions and the €1 homes, generally speaking, the €1 homes are not in the best of condition and do have to be renovated. But what about the auction homes? Do you ever find that these homes that are being auctioned off in other parts of the country are move-in ready, or do they generally also have to be renovated and need a lot of work done?
Like I said before, because the situation that caused the sale is normally the owner not being able to pay off their mortgage, the properties that are being sold through an auction are normally properties that are habitable, that are in good condition, and that do not normally need renovation works.
That's interesting because we've mentioned it before as well, that when you're looking at even properties that aren't on auction in Italy, that you can find a price all in moving into a habitable apartment or a full standalone home could be roughly on par without having to have the headaches associated with it. So it's interesting to hear that these homes that are being auctioned may also be in a similar category of being habitable just from the get-go. And I'm curious though, when it comes to these auctioned homes, how fast does that process move? Is it much slower than if you were to just buy a property normally, or is it somewhat on par?
I'd say it's pretty close because normally, like what people do when they want to buy a property through an auction is they start looking at we have some major websites in Italy where you can find all of these listings, all of these properties that are being sold through an auction. And normally from the moment in which the property is published, normally the auction takes place 3 to 4 months after. So it's a relatively short period of time. So I wouldn't say that the process is much longer than a just normal, regular process. And also there are normally some steps that are not necessary when you buy a property through an auction compared to when you buy a property from the owner, because normally you don't have to make a formal offer and then wait for the offer to be accepted by the owner. And then you normally enter into a preliminary agreement, and then you have to deal with a notary, so set an appointment with a notary, and to enter into the final contract of sale. In the case of the auction, everything is done through the courts, and the highest bidder, the one who gets the property, will become the owner through an order of the judge. So there is a decree from the judge that basically makes you the owner of the property. So it's that simple. There is no real estate agent involved, which is also another thing that makes the process easier. So it sounds like, a more complex process when you read about that online, but then in practice, it's not a more complex process because you save a lot of steps. And also you save a lot of money because, like I just said, there is no real estate agent involved. There is no public notary involved, and both are normally quite expensive. And we've talked about their roles in many other videos.
So it sounds as though, even though there may be some levels of complexity attached with it, that possibly going for a property at auction may be the better alternative. But I'm curious, both in the case of looking at homes that are being auctioned as well as the €1 homes, do you usually have the ability to see these homes beforehand, or is it more common that you would only be able to see it once everything is signed?
When it comes to purchasing properties at an auction, normally you can visit the property that you intend to purchase, but only one time, and you need to arrange the visit with the court. But you have to make sure that you check, if that's what you're interested in, the whole house, the time that is arranged for you to see the house, because you only have that one chance to see the property that you want to purchase. But by law, you are entitled to visit the property for which you want to make an offer. And also keep in mind that the court is required to provide fully transparent information about the house that is being purchased, that is being sold through the auction. So the website of the court needs to be extremely informative and detailed regarding that property that is being sold through an auction. With regard to the €1 houses program, that's a very good question. And there is normally not a lot of information online, so it's always best to contact the municipality that has activated the €1 houses program. Normally, because you have to carry out intensive renovation works, and also in some cases, the person who gets the property is the one that has the best renovation plan for that property. So because of that, normally you are allowed to see the property one time by contacting the municipality itself. But like I said, it's always best to contact the municipality about that, because the single municipalities, they are able to basically have different requirements for their own programs.
And, one last question before we end off the episode. If somebody's interested in going through the process for finding a home at auction, because we know from past episodes that you've mentioned that ItalianRealEstateLawyers.com can help individuals or families to go through the process to find a €1 home. But does ItalianRealEstateLawyers.com also offer help with going to auction and finding these properties, or helping somebody and doing it on their behalf?
Yes, of course. So we do help with finding properties that are being sold through an auction. So for our clients who want to try and save some money, we can definitely help them locate properties that are being sold through an auction. And also what we can do for our clients is we can basically represent them in the entire process, so that they don't even have to be present in Italy or be present during the auction, because based on a power of attorney, we can fully represent them. And while they will be the ones becoming the property owners, we can be the ones who will be signing all the paperwork for them on their behalf and in their name, and who will basically take care of the whole bureaucratic steps that are necessary to buy a house through an auction.
Well, absolutely fantastic. So thank you so much for getting into that and giving some more information about the €1 homes, as well as these homes and other ways of purchasing property in Italy, because so often the €1 homes are the ones that people end up finding out about. At least they end up finding out about it first, because that's kind of what's gone viral in the news over the past years since they've come out onto the market. But there are so many other ways to get homes in Italy that could be roughly on par, as you were mentioning, that also sometimes like the idea of getting a home for just one whole euro, that's amazing, but it's I'm not going to say misleading, but it is definitely not the full story in many cases. So thank you so much for shedding light on this topic. But of course, if anybody is needing help to purchase a €1 home, or to go to auction, or whatever it may be, to find their home or relocate to Italy, how can they get in contact with you and your team?
People can contact us through our website, ItalianRealEstateLawyers.com, or give us a call. The number is on the website.
Absolutely fantastic. And of course, if you're interested in more content like this about Italian real estate, be sure that you're subscribed to the YouTube channel as well as the audio-only podcast. But of course, if you're subscribed to the YouTube channel, you're also automatically subscribed to the Italian Citizenship podcast, where we talk a bit more about the practical side of legally remaining in Italy. And it's a wonderful resource of information, if I do say so myself. But of course, if you're interested in other information about life abroad, living abroad, or living abroad as a dual citizen expat, be sure to come over to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Rafael di Furia, where I talk about many of these related topics, as well as some of the ins and outs of what it is like to go through the day-to-day life as somebody living in a different country. But of course, as always, thank you, Mr. Marco Permunian from ItalianRealEstateLawyers.com. And of course, thank you all for joining us. I'm Rafael di Furia. Stay safe and healthy out there, and we will see you all next time. Later.
Thank you.